One of the hottest questions in all of One Piece over the last few months has been, who is the man marked by flames? You've probably heard at least a few theories on this by now, like Dragon or Gaban, Saul, Panda Man, Mihawk, Saturn, a Klabautermon, the Revolutionary Army, or maybe even the new God's Knights, who knows? I almost feel a little late to the party by not doing a full video on this till now because there's so many theories out there, but at the same time, I think it all worked out because I do have an answer that I haven't heard anyone else say just yet. This person may come as a bit of a surprise, so I'd like to first set the stage for just a couple minutes by covering some important context around the man marked by flames that we already know, particularly the fact that they seem to have the final road poneglyph in their possession. Because I think any conversation about this poneglyph needs to start with Whitebeard, since he held Fishman Island as his territory for most of the last 20 years. And that's the place we last saw the poneglyph in question. We know it has to be that one because Big Mom, Zoe, and Wano still have all of theirs just like they did in Roger's time. And for reasons I'll get into in just a moment, it's extremely likely that Whitebeard would have just had to have some role in moving the poneglyph and thus have some connection to the man marked by flames. So let's first consider the timeline of events, because 25 years ago, Roger visited Fishman Island with Odin to read the road poneglyph in question, and this is the last time that we've seen it in the story. 1 year later, Roger died, and then pirates rushed to the island to get to the New World, and some even kidnapped mermaids along the way. So at some point soon after, Whitebeard claimed it as his territory in order to protect them, which then started an era of relative peace until he died during Marineford, at which point the same thing happened as before and pirates rushed to the island, until this time Big Mom claimed it as her territory. And we can rule out Big Mom having it because we've already seen her treasure room, which just has the same single road poneglyph that she's had since Roger's time. So that means that Fishman Island's road poneglyph was either moved by random pirates who showed up to Fishman Island directly following Roger's or Whitebeard's deaths, or Whitebeard just did something with it during the roughly 18 years that he held Fishman Island as his territory. I mean, when it's boiled down like this, I think it becomes obvious that Whitebeard almost has to have played a role here. We even learned how Whitebeard and Neptune have been close since their younger days, where they apparently even shared sake cups together, and we should all know by now just how big of a deal that is in One Piece. If someone tried taking the road poneglyph during or even before the time Whitebeard held the territory, they would have most definitely had to face his wrath. So really, the question we should be asking is, did Whitebeard move that poneglyph as a precaution before his death, or did someone sneak in and take it between Marineford and Big Mom getting there? I mean, if someone forcefully took it after Marineford, which would be less than 2 years ago, surely Neptune or Jinbei would have said something about that by now. I mean, Neptune was there when Roger and Odin read the road poneglyph, so he has to know that it's incredibly important. So the fact that the fishmen have been kind of mum on the location of it is a hint to me, at least, that they're not worried about it. They might know where it is, or at the very least that they know it's with someone they trust, which was probably Whitebeard. And maybe it even has something to do with the inheritance that Bakken and Weevil have been searching for. I mean, generally speaking, each of the old Yonko who were Rocks pirates in the past, like Big Mom and Kaido, were in control of their own road poneglyphs. And since Whitebeard held Fishman Island as his territory, you could almost say that he had one as well, although we definitely don't think of it that way usually. And although Whitebeard didn't seem to have much interest in finding Laugh-Tale since he turned down Roger's offer to share the location, he obviously knew the One Piece was indeed real and that there was some man Roger was waiting for who isn't Blackbeard. Whitebeard had to know that dying was a very legitimate possibility during Marineford, if not the expectation. I think it would just make a lot of sense for him to move it and have some kind of plan for it after his death, if for nothing else, to keep it out of the midst of other emperors. And that is where the man marked by flames comes in. Who could have a close enough connection to Whitebeard to be in on whatever this plan is with the poneglyph, but also have the ability and time to create whirlpools around a mysterious all-black ship all the time? And I can understand that this answer will seem out of left field at first, but I think it's actually gonna be Masked Deuce, the former right hand of Ace on the Spade Pirates and also one of Whitebeard's doctors, the same doctor who treated Whitebeard's very first burn mark that he got while fighting Ace, the same doctor who told Ace to stop trying to kill Whitebeard because of the dangers his territories would face, such as Fishman Island, if Whitebeard were to die. And this is the same guy who once ate half of the Mera Mera no Mi and is using a flame dial with Ace's fire to travel travel the seas as we speak. And I know that some of this information may come as a shock to some of you because Masked Deuce has barely appeared in the manga or anime ever, but he is a canon character, and we learned a ton about him during the Ace novels, which are actually written from his perspective as he follows Ace along on his travels. And now if you're wondering if the information from these novels is canon, I think the answer is definitely yes, but there is somewhat of a debate. For example, if you were to look at the wiki, a lot of the novels are considered non-canon, but there's an asterisk for the Ace novel specifically because it was supervised by Oda. To me, that carries a lot of weight, and I mean, generally speaking, do we really think Oda would let an entire backstory for Ace be created without his supervision? I feel like Ace is a little too important to let that happen. So I think all this information is canon, but take it for what you will. And if you'd like a quick way to digest the information from this series, then definitely go check out the manga version of the Ace novels from Boichi, who drew Dr. Stone. This manga mostly contains the same information that we get within the novels, so you can basically consider all of that canon as well. But there is some stuff toward the end that is only found in the Boichi manga, but since it was published within the official One Piece magazine, which is also mostly considered canon and has given us canon information like new devil fruit designs and other minor details in the past, I think it's safe to use as well. So I'm going to walk through some of the key things that we learned about this character, since I'm sure he's new to at least some of you, but along the way I'll also explain how these elements prove he is the man marked by flames. So Ace met Deuce at the very beginning of Ace's journey at a place called the Ocean's Antlion Pit, and what was peculiar about this place is that it was surrounded by currents which essentially made it like a giant whirlpool. Anyone who drew too close was forcefully pulled in. This should immediately sound some alarm bells because of the whirlpools that the man marked by flames has around his ship. So how did Deuce manage to escape this whirlpool island? Ironically, by using flames. He and Ace met on this island and found the Mera Mera no Mi inside a treasure chest, which they then split in half because they were both so hungry. But since Ace took a bite first, he's the one who got the powers. Deuce then designed the Striker, which is that fire-powered surfboard thing that Ace has used on a number of occasions, including saying goodbye to Yamato and Wano, and then he built it from scratch from random stuff on the island. And Ace's fire gave them enough thrust to get out of the currents around the island. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, the last time we saw Deuce, he was using a flame dial with Ace's fire to power that very same boat. But remember how the man marked by flames is supposed to have an all-black ship of some kind now? Well, let me read you an interesting paragraph directly from the novel itself. Everyone should go subscribe to Dak's channel. Oh wait, shit, that's the wrong page. Finally finished building a ship. Our hands and clothes were filthy black now, as once Ace had trained himself properly, we burned all the wood we were using to make the ship. Charring and carbonizing the surface of the wood made it more durable and resistant to fire and water. Much better than using untreated wood, according to a sailor's journal I once read, which was probably Brag Men. How effective this was, I didn't know, but surely it could withstand the waves and salt breeze better than untreated wood. Our vessel was only possible because Ace could instantly create fire and direct it to do exactly what he wanted. I mean, come on, he literally burnt the wood a little bit to make the ship even stronger and withstand Ace's own flames. I'm not saying the Striker is the ship that the man marked by flames has, but rather if Deuce was capable of building the Striker from random stuff on the island on day one of his journey, imagine what he could do if he had even better materials to work with alongside the flame dial that he has, especially after all the journeys with Ace and Whitebeard. I mean, if he got his hands on a ship that could sail using wind like normal ships do, then maybe the flame dial could be repurposed to point underneath the ship to create the whirlpools that supposedly surround the man marked by flames to begin with. And I mean, one option here is just the piece of Spadil, which was the Spade pirate ship, which Ace actually burnt once he joined Whitebeard. Whitebeard kind of told him like, hey man, you don't have to do that. Most people don't whenever they join, so their crew can stay on that ship and follow us. So maybe that ship was pulled back out of the water and repaired or whatever, but either way, this all just sets the stage that Deuce could be capable of making an all-black ship and maybe even making the whirlpools by using the flame dial. I mean, the way the turbine thing on the Striker worked was that it spun, right? The fire was used to make it spin fast enough to create propulsion and go, basically. And so, I mean, if you have that same thing in the water fire and it spins, it should create a current and potentially a whirlpool. Lafitte said it might be tied to a devil fruit power, and ironically maybe it is because it's Ace's fire in that flame dial. And the fact that he was able to build and design the striker on day one of his journey kind of raises the question of what his origins even are. And we actually don't even know his real name. Ace gave him the epithet Masked Deuce, and he just kind of stuck with it eventually. And all we know is that he comes from a family of doctors, but he dropped out of medical school so that he could write a nautical adventure novel like Brag Men, which is where he probably heard about the carbonizing of the wood to begin with. And in case you aren't sure what Brag Men is, it's a book within One Piece written by an explorer named Louis Arnault less than 100 years ago. And this is the book that gave Little Garden its name due to the giants that live there. We also saw Brag Men amongst the books from the Tree of Knowledge in Ohara, and Nami even has a copy of it on the ship. Many people consider this book to be fictional romance because of the tall tales told within it, which reminds me a lot of another explorer we've met who is one of my favorite characters in the entire story, and I have a video coming on him eventually, which was Mont Blanc Noland, who has a book written about him as well that talks all about his tall tales, called Noland the Liar. And Deuce's dream to write this book is actually why the Ace novels even exist in the first place, because like I said earlier, they're all written from his perspective while following Ace along in his travels. And Deuce even left a copy at Ace's grave after refusing to sell it to Morgan's, which means that a copy of this book actually exists in the world of One Piece, and I hope one day Luffy gets his hands on it. But writing a book like this reminds me a lot of Oden's logbook, where Oden wrote about his travels as well as Roger's. And this is where the pieces really start coming together, I think, because obviously Roger and Ace are father and son. Oden wrote about the old generation, and Deuce wrote about this one. Also, Ace and Oden held the same exact position on Whitebeard's crew. And if you think about Oden's role in the story, he was basically Roger's final key to getting to Laugh Tale. The last person he needed was Oden, and right now, the last person Luffy needs is the man marked by flames. It's much different since Roger needed a way to read them, and Luffy already has that, of course, but symbolically, they're at the same point in the journey. So could Deuce be fulfilling that role just like Oden did so long ago? And generally speaking, Whitebeard had to give permission for Oden to join Roger. I mean, yes, Oden wanted to and everything, but still, Whitebeard had to okay it, making Whitebeard somewhat of a gatekeeper for Roger getting the Laugh Tale, right? And since Whitebeard was always said to be the man closest to the One Piece, maybe he really did have something to do with where this last poneglyph went. I mean, Deuce and Ace did visit Fishman Island before even meeting Whitebeard, so he does know how to get down there. But soon afterward, Ace fights Jinbei and wins, but then he gets challenged by Whitebeard and loses. So he joins, but doesn't truly join until he loses to Whitebeard 100 times. In the meantime, Deuce became one of their doctors, and Whitebeard then approached him after the 99th battle, because he got some burn marks from Ace. He sought out Deuce specifically because he was embarrassed about it and wanted to keep this as much of a secret as he could, and so this gave them the chance to talk about all sorts of stuff. Why Ace is the way he is, where Deuce came from, and even why Ace is doing what he's doing. This is even where Whitebeard first learned that Shanks saved Ace's little brother. And during this moment, Deuce learned how Whitebeard protects other territories and that they'd be in danger if he ever died. So after this, Deuce no longer supported Ace's attempts to kill Whitebeard. So his newfound knowledge of Whitebeard's territories, including Fishman Island, coincided with caring for a burn mark. Interesting. So a few years later, we get to see Deuce at Ace and Whitebeard's graves, where he shows us that he has a flame dial with Ace's fire inside. But Deuce also called up Morgan's and refused to sell the Ace novel, but then requested to work with him, but only so he could follow Luffy and Sabo. So he's set up very well to come back in the story in some form or fashion for sure, but where he does is the question. And the last place that we ever saw him was leaving Sphinx Island, which is unironically the same place Bakken and Weevil think Whitebeard's inheritance is kept. So maybe there's some connection to be made there. But now that you at least have a little bit of understanding on this character, let's talk about the mark that makes him the man marked by flames. So when it comes to this mark by flames, it's heavily implied to be a physical mark or injury of some kind, like a burn scar, which is what many of us have been calling it. But the truth is that it's somewhat ambiguous. So I asked my friend Hidden Island to give me some insight since he's married to a native Japanese speaker, And there are some really important things to consider. The first time this character was mentioned, Oda used an odd combination of kanji and katakana, but then afterward, like with Blackbeard and Aokiji, he just used katakana, but it's still all read the same way. The burn scar here is Hinokizu, but that's not the normal way to refer to a burn scar, like one you'd get on accident from cooking. That would not include the no in between. So the way Oda has phrased it could just be read as a simple burn scar, but maybe also a marking that looks like fire, like a tattoo or other scar. So basically there is some physical indicator of fire or flames involved with this character, but it is purposely ambiguous as to exactly what the mark is. And when it comes to Masked Deuce, he didn't have any obvious flame marking last time we saw him, but remember, this man is using a freaking flame dial to power a ship now, and he even said that there isn't a flame on this ocean that burns hotter than this one, so it's probably freaking hot. Unlike Ace, he isn't made of fire, so him getting burnt on accident or something is totally on the table, I think. Also, he always wore a big jacket, so him having a scar under those clothes from the past, like maybe an accident from being with Ace or fighting with Ace one time, is totally on the table. And during Deuce's travels with the Spade Pirates specifically, they were often chased by a marine named Isuka. Isuka is basically Ace's version of Smoker, and the thing about her is that she had a burn scar from a fire that was started by another marine during a pirate attack. And so because of that, she still hates pirates to this very day, and that's probably the reason that she's particularly hunting Ace, since he has fire powers and everything. But again, that's just another burn scar that ties to Deuce. Now that's not one on his body, obviously, but Isuka did hide that burn scar under her gloves often. And so again, Deuce hiding a burn scar somewhere on his body with his big jacket or something makes sense, because his epithet is literally Masked Deuce. The mask is meant to keep his identity hidden, and obviously the identity of the man marked by flames is being hidden pretty well right now, so just tying all these things together to me makes a lot of sense. So while there isn't an obvious burn mark anywhere on him right now, there being one revealed eventually is definitely a possibility. And this last idea is a little bit out there, but it's something that I personally would love to see, is a reverse Ace tattoo, where it's still ASCE, but the ACE is crossed out instead of the S, because now we know Sabo is alive, and he even has the Marimara no Mi now, but obviously Ace passed away. This would make the mark by flames extra meaningful, which I would just love, but it could serve a double purpose where only certain people might see that tattoo and think it's a mark by flames. And that tattoo could also just be a branding instead of a normal tattoo, so it really is a burn mark in that sense. But either way, I just love that idea. And now maybe the ultimate question of all is, why Deuce? Why not Marco, Jozu, Vista, or someone else? Well, to be clear, I do think some of the other top Whitebeard pirates know about this plan, but it's just that Masked Deuce was tasked with being on the ship and protecting it primarily. The poneglyph was probably moved before Whitebeard's death, and then I bet it was put on Sphinx Island or something. But then after Whitebeard died, pirates like Bakken and Weevil probably came looking for his treasure, so they had to do something else with it. And then in comes this mysterious man marked by flames. I mean, you have to admit that it's weird that the poneglyph is being tied to a ship that is apparently always sailing around. This idea alone takes the heat off every other island nation, because the strongest pirates in the world won't assume it's on an actual island. So maybe that was the whole point of the plan. It's harder to find this way, and no islands will be at risk, which is probably the whole reason Whitebeard wanted to move it from Fishman Island in the first place. And if I had to guess when it was moved, it was probably after Blackbeard killed Thatch. He was a long-term member of the Whitebeard crew and probably knew that the poneglyph was down there, and also that it's needed to reach Laughtail since he was on the crew when Odin joined Roger. If Blackbeard killed his own crewmate, which should be like a brother to him, then he would probably have no mercy on the fishmen either. And this could also tie to the Payback War, where the Whitebeard remnants clashed with Blackbeard for revenge. This occurred around a year ago, which is about the same time that Blackbeard talked to Aokiji about the man marked by flames. If any of Whitebeard's top commanders weren't there at that war, Blackbeard probably would have a hunch on who has the poneglyph. And while Blackbeard did know that Deuce existed, I don't think he would ever guess that that's the person with the poneglyph. Whitebeard had thousands of people under him, and I don't think Deuce stood out that much other than being tied to Ace. The fact that Blackbeard saw all of the top commanders at the Payback War is probably throwing him off as it is. Plus, a lot of the commanders are hotheads who are quick to react. I mean, Ace is a prime example after going after Blackbeard in a Akainu, but even the fact the Payback War happened kind of proves that whole point about the rest of them. So someone who's smart and moves meticulously like Deuce makes a lot of sense to me. And also, we wonder how Blackbeard and Kid know about the man marked by flames, and what Law and Robin seem to know, since they had some kind of weird looks whenever it was mentioned in chapter 1056. And I almost wonder if it was just put in the paper. You know, Luffy doesn't read the paper, and the crew is often stuck in an island for long periods of time, and usually Robin's the only one who gets caught up, but she usually doesn't share a lot of that information. And since Deuce literally writes stuff in the papers already with Morgan's, maybe he's the one who released that information, but he's being cryptic about it, so in a way, the right person finds him, or he finds the right person even. And if nothing else I said here convinces you, just think about this. How awesome would it be for Luffy's final step to Laugh Tale to be aided by his brother from beyond the grave? Both Whitebeard and Ace may have died during Marineford, but their wills live on in so many characters in the story. And the thing that's really unique about Deuce in this situation is that both Ace and Whitebeard were his captains, at least at some point in time. He's definitely carrying both of those wills, and I feel like the emotional potential with Deuce being the man marked by flames and delivering that final poneglyph, carrying out the will of Ace and Whitebeard, would just be almost too perfect. I mean, like I said earlier with the Odin stuff, Whitebeard basically allowed Roger to get to Laugh Tale. He agreed to give up Odin. Yes, Odin wanted to and asked for permission, but you could still look at Whitebeard as a gatekeeper of sorts. But that's it for this video, guys, so please let me know what you think about this down below, and if you could like and subscribe and all those other YouTube things, that'd be awesome. But for now, later.